Hello folks, my name is Matthew Peterson, a trainer here at Pragmatic, and as you saw in the intro video, we do everything from on-demand learning, private trainings, hackathons, etc. And in this new YouTube series, I want to show you how to build a Power application directly from Microsoft Teams. So this is going to be episode 1 of quite a long series where we're going to build out an application from beginning to end. Now, in order to build out an app in Teams, you need a few things. One of those is a Teams license that allows for Microsoft Dataverse, or we call Dataverse Lite within Teams. Now, some of your restrictions with this is when you use Dataverse in Teams as opposed to original Dataverse, you're allowed to have up to 2 gigabytes worth of storage or up to 1 million rows per table that you provision per team. So I'm going to show you where to check to make sure you can make an application in Teams, and then we're going to be building a check-in application. This is an application I built for my former school that I used to work at in order to check students in when they didn't go to the lunchroom, but they went to another teacher's classroom for homework help or volunteering, etc. So this whole series, again, we're going to build an application little bit by little bit throughout each episode. So in episode 1, let's see what kind of tables we're going to create and how do we do it within Teams. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. So the first thing I want to show you is if you go to make.powerapps.com and you come on over, once you sign in, if you come on over and hit your settings icon at the top, and then you go to your admin center. This is where we're going to check to see if you have the capability to create applications within Teams. So as we see here, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go underneath resources, and then I'm going to check or click on capacity. So when I go to capacity, what we want to go to is Microsoft Teams. So right now we can see here at Pragmatic Works is that we have a total of 10 Teams environments that we're allowed to use Microsoft applications in. I'm currently using 9 of 10, and that's about to change because I'm going to provision within a Teams environment the Dataverse environment in creating tables. But that's where you go to see if you're allowed to do this. So I'm going to minimize this, go into Teams. And the first thing that you'll notice is we need to have the Power Apps application installed within Teams. So if you don't see this on your left-hand navigation bar, what you'll do is you'll click on your ellipses here, and then you'll simply search for Power Apps. Now, I've already selected it. When you do select it and you put it in here, what I like to do is pin this so I don't have to do this every single time. So if you right click, I've already pinned mine, but this is how you would unpin, but I recommend pinning it here so that you can do this in the future and not have to do that every time. So now, the next thing I'm going to do, and what you'll do if you're going to follow along here, is we're going to click on Power Apps. When we click on Power Apps, as you can see, I've got a few other applications that I've built within different Teams channels. I'm going to click Start Now at this point. So when you click Start Now, this is where you now decide what team are you going to put this into. So I have created a team. You would need to create a team or put it into an existing team. And I'm going to put this into my YouTube App in Team series. Once I have that selected, I'll then hit Create. So now what is happening is within this team, it is provisioning a Microsoft Dataverse database. This Dataverse database is simply an Azure SQL Server database that is hosted by Microsoft out in the cloud. So it handles your backups, it does all the maintenance here for you. And once the environment is provisioned, this is where we can go in and create our own tables to house our data. You might say, well, I've been using SharePoint for my Canvas applications. What's the benefit of using the Dataverse within Teams? Well, we get more security with it. When we assign people to the team, we can choose what are they allowed to do with the data. Can they create data, read data, edit data? Can they do it to just their records, or can they see everybody's records? And we'll have a whole conversation on the security part of this in one of the future episodes that come out. So, it says there was a problem reaching the app, so I'm going to hit retry here. And now it looks like we're going to be good to go. So let me try this over again. So now once I have that done, I'm going to hit New App. Once I hit New App, I'm then going to select my team here. So in this part, it's going to be my YouTube App in a Team series. And I'm going to hit Create. And it looks like the first time it didn't get the things ready just right off the bat. So that's okay, we're gonna let it go through here and provision again, and then we're gonna start to build out our tables that we wanna house. And basically, we're gonna have 2 tables here. I'm gonna have a table for all the check-ins themselves for where the students are currently at. And I'm going to have another table that is going to have all of my student information. And then I'm going to have one more table actually for this, for all the different locations of the rooms throughout my school. So as this is provisioning, we'll then start building out our tables. All right, so with a little bit of magic of editing, it finally pulled up. Every once in a while, there's a little bit of lag in the Teams environment, but now we're ready to start building. So the first thing we're going to do is give our app a name. So what I'm going to call this application right here is I'm going to call this my student check-in application. So then I'm going to come on over here and click save. Now what we need to do is we need to create tables for this application in order to bring data into it. And once this finally saves, then that's what we're going to do. So the first thing I'm going to do over here on the left-hand side is I'm going to click on data. Now once I click on data over on the left-hand side, I'm now going to hit create new table. And so right here, this is just going to be my first table. We'll make it a really simple one to get started with. I'm just going to call this the room table. These are going to house all of my room locations. So then I'll hit create here. So we're creating the table directly from the design studio, but for our other tables, I'll show you where we can create it in a different location. So as we start off at the top, the first thing you'll see within all Dataverse columns is you get a primary name column. And it's typically just called name, and not typically, that's what it is called. So if I come on over here and I select on name, I'm going to edit this column. So I'm going to hit edit column to give it a different kind of name here. So for my display name, I'm just simply going to call it the room number. And actually, let me put in room number like this. And then right here for your primary name columns, they can either be single lines of text or they can be auto-numbered. We're going to keep it as a single line of text. And you can think of this name column as like the title column within a SharePoint list. It's not the unique identifier of your record, but it's really how we talk to somebody else about what record we're interested in. So I'm just going to go right here with room number, and then at the very bottom, I'm going to hit save. Now, if I want to add in new columns, all I have to do is click new columns up here at the top and add them in, but I don't need to make any more columns for my room number, my room table itself. But right from here, I can start to enter in data. So I can put in a few different records here. So I can say room number 26. And then as I click away, it's now saved. And then I can come over here and say room number 43. And then I'll make one more room number. We'll go with the good old 14 here. So once I have that done, if I come over here and hit close, that table has now been created. And that table is now going to be into my application. So if I come over here and hit save, I know we really haven't done anything with the app yet, but now that I have the data in the app, I don't have to re-add it back in the future. So what if I want to add tables in a different fashion, not directly from the app? Well, what I do is I'm going to come back to my build section, and when you're in the build section, this is going to show you all the teams that you currently have applications into that you have access to. Now what I want to do is once I'm in the build, if I hit see all, this will look for any of you who've used Dataverse out in the official Make.Power apps. This is my solution that is within the Dataverse team. And this is where I can come on in and create more items. So you can see that I have an app, I have a table. Now I want to make another table. So I'm going to come up here and hit new. We're going to go table. Now when we create the table, I'm going to give it a display name here. So this is going to be my student table. Again, when you have a student table or any table, you want the display name and plural name to be different because this is going to make sure our Power Apps FX formulas we write don't get confused with two different names. Then I'm going to go to the primary name column, and instead of the name for my students, I'm going to make this my student identifier. So I could go like student ID, or I could call it the student identifier. Here I'm just going to go with student identifier. And then I'm going to come down and click on save. So now it's going to save this table, and as we can see, we now have a table, and we're going to skip through all those little tutorials, and we've got the table made. Now within the table, if I come over to the customization and I click on columns, this is how I can see all the columns that are within Dataverse. And what you'll know within this table, and with every table you create, it creates a whole bunch of extra columns for you. This is what is going to be used by the background system, things like who is the owner of the record, when was it created, the last time it was modified, etc. So a lot of these columns we don't really mess with, just Dataverse needs them to do their operations. We're going to create the rest of our columns of data that I want to house within my application. So let's add a few of these columns in here. So the next column that I want to add is I'm going to come up here to new column, and I'm going to select new column. And once I select new column, I'll then come on over and give it a display name. So for my first one, I'm going to house the first name of my student. My data type is going to be single line of text, but notice we have all sorts of different data types to choose from, and we'll use a few of these throughout the rest of our tables. But this one, single line of text, we can choose if this is a required column or not when we create records. Now, if I choose optional, doesn't have to be put anything in here for the record to be saved. If I make it business required, if I don't put the data in, it will not save the record for this column. If I put business recommended, there'll be a little blue check mark next to these field names to let us know, hey, we really think you should put something here, but it's not going to be required. If you hit save without anything in it, it will still save it. So I'm going to make this definitely a business required column. Once I have that set up, I'm going to hit save, and we now have a new column created. Then I'm going to continue to add a few more columns here. So I'm going to do another new column. This one is going to be my last name column. So I'm going to choose last name, going to keep it single line of text again. And again, I'm going to make this a business required column. So once I have that, we'll hit save. And again, in this first episode, it's all about getting our tables created so that we can create the application or start to create the application in our next episode. So now I'm going to go back to new column. I'm going to add in a few more here. So the next one I want is the student email. I'm going to be using this later for some flows to send my students emails about their check-ins. So for here, I'm going to choose text, and then for the format, we can choose that we want it to be set as an email, and that's the format that I want here. So that's going to be my student email. This time, I'm going to go business recommended so that when we make the app later, we'll see what the difference looks like between the two. So I'll hit save. And then I'm going to add in two more columns to this table. So my next one is going to be the parent email address. So I'll zoom in here for you. This is going to be the parent email. So I can send them emails as well about when their students check in for homework help or whatever it might be. So for the text here, I want to format this as email once again. And then for this one, I'm also going to go with business recommended. And then I'll hit save. And I have one more column that I want to put on this student table. So my last column that I'm going to put in here is what grade level they're currently in. Now I'm going to keep this as a single line of text because maybe it's pre-K or maybe we want to say freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior. So I'm going to keep this as a single line of text as well, and then I'll hit save. So I've created this table and I now have all of the things that I want within here. So if I go back to the student table itself, as we can see, right now, it's giving me a preview of my data, but I don't have anything in. So if I want to make new data, I can do it here. And if I want to see the rest of my columns, I hit this drop down and say, show me the rest of my columns that I want to enter data into. However, what I really like to do is I like just to come over here to edit. So I have a bigger view of it. And so I'm going to bring these columns in. So first name, last name, the grade level. What else do I want? The parent email and the student email. And so what I'm going to do is just simply create a few records here. Now I'm not going to make you watch me do it, so the magic of editing, you'll see a few different records. I recommend putting in 2 or 3 different students at this point. So as you see here, I've just put in 3 really quick student records: first name, last name, grade level, parent email, and the student email. So now I have some data when we bring it into the applications that we can start to look at. So now I have just one last table that I want to create for our app creation. So I'm going to come over here, hit back. This takes me back into my solution. So again, I have currently my room table and I have the student table. Again, on the room table, it was just the room number. As you can see, that's that extra column that when the record is saved, it tells me when it was created on. If I click to show 3 more, I can click on modified, modified on, and the owner. And as I hit save, we can see that I was the last person to modify it and I am the owner of the record. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is make our next table, and this is going to be our last table for today. So we're going to go over here to make our new table. This one is going to be called my student check-in and out table. And for my primary column, I'm just going to call this something like the check-in identifier. So the check-in identifier or check-in record. Call it whatever you want, but I'd go with check-in identifier so that if you follow me throughout the rest of these episodes, your formulas are going to match with mine. And then I'm just going to come down here and click on save. Again, this is going to put the table into my solution within this environment. And once again, I want to create some more columns. So I'm going to come over here to the right and click on columns. Now for these columns, I'm going to come up here, and the first thing I want to do before I make a new column is I'm going to modify my check-in identifier column. So when I click on it, over to the right, I'm going to change the data type. And what I want for here is this to be auto-numbered. Now when I choose auto-number, there's a different types that we can choose for the auto-numbering. We can go with string, date, and you can even do custom. For me, what I'm going to do is just a simple string prefix number. And then for the prefix, I'm just going to go something like SCHK. And then that way, when I come on down, we'll see that every record that gets created is going to be auto-numbered with the CHK in front of it. So this is going to be a nice way to identify a record. So once I have that set, I'm going to hit save. We'll see that our data type is now going to be changed within here, and now it's set to auto-number. Now we just need to create the rest of our columns. So I'll go to new column, and the first column I'm going to make is the student itself. Who are we checking in? So I'm going to go to student. Now here it's not going to be free text. We're going to collect or select our students from our student table. So I'm going to choose to do a lookup. And this is definitely going to be a required column. And then for my related table, this is where I'm going to have it go to my student table. So I can pick the student from that table, and it's going to create the relationship between these two tables, which is great because if I bring this Dataverse data into Power BI, my data model is made. It has all the relationships, so I could start to do data analytics off of it. So once I have this set, we're going to come on down and we're going to hit save. So now we have our student column, which is a lookup to the student table itself. And then we're going to be able to access anything from the student table in our Power Apps formulas to bring into the application. So now we're going to do another new column. The next thing I want to know is where are we checking them into? So this is going to be my location. This one again is also going to be a lookup, and we're going to look up to, this is going to be a required column, and we are going to look up to our room table. So the room table, which has a list of all the rooms we can check students into, and then I'm going to hit save. So once I hit save here, we're going to have that one done. Now, one of the other things we could have done within that room column is I could have made it a choice column where they only have a certain amount of choices to pick for what room they're going to. But if you're going to have a lot of rooms, you probably wouldn't want to use a choice column. Typically, I only use choice columns if there's, somewhere between 8 or under, and that those column values don't change that often. Because if we have a new room, I'm going to have to go into the choice column, add a new choice to it, and it's a lot of uptake or upkeep. So that's why I'm making it a lookup to a separate, completely different table, because we might have 15, 30, 40 different rooms that they could go into. So we just have a few more here. So I'm going to come over here, do another new column. The next thing that I want to know is what teacher is checking them in. So this is going to be teacher. I'm going to keep it single line of text. Again, I could have a different teacher table if we want to, but I know this seems like a long video, but this will be the longest one of the whole series because we got to get everything set up. This is going to be business required, and this is just going to be single text here. Then I'll come down here and click on save. And then we have 3 more columns and we will be done. So another new column. This one is going to be the comments. So that when the teacher checks them in, what are they here for? So rather than, we have our single line of text here, and as we come on down, if we go over to text, we can give them a little bit more room to write their comments in. So I'm going to make this a text area instead. Now if I go to advanced options for these comments and I scroll down, I can choose how many characters we're going to allow within their comments. So 100 might not be enough, so I'm going to bump this up to 300. So you have 300 characters to write their comments in. And then I'm going to hit save. All right, and then we only have 2 more columns. So our last 2 columns here, we definitely need to know the check-in date and time. And so for my data type, I'm going to go with date and time because I want to know the date and the exact time that they were checked in. And this as well is going to be business required. And then I'm going to hit save. Last column to do, so new column, we'll come back over here. This is going to be my checkout date and time. And this one again is going to be a date and time data type. But this one for required, I am going to leave it as optional. And the reason I'm leaving this as optional is because when we check them in, we're not ready to check them out until the end, but I need the record to get saved so that I can go later down the road and update the record for when they do check out of our room. So that's why we're going to leave this as optional. So once I have that set up, I'm going to hit save. And now all of my tables and all of my columns are now created. And so this is our first episode of the series. In the next episode that will be coming out, we're going to go back into the application, start designing it, and figuring out how can we make this great check-in, check-out system directly from Microsoft Teams making the app. So again, if you've never built a Teams in app, you're going to have a whole series devoted to it. I hope you enjoy. Let me know in the comments below what kind of things you might want to see that we do within this app other than checking in and checking out. But we're going to have Power Automate put in here. We're going to do some Power BI data analytics at the very end of our series once we've actually started creating our data. So we're going to have a lot of fun, and I hope to see you in the next one.